Hey guys, I'm Matt Lighty, and I just finished my region locked all boss challenge that I did mostly off stream and offline and partially on stream for the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. With that, I've wanted to do this run, but do it like totally live and totally on YouTube ever since Elden Ring came out, really, and I've been playing it on and off. I have 100% of the DLC at this point. Most of that footage is on Twitch, you could view it. But yeah, this is what I want to focus on, is doing this. So we're going to do this run starting probably tomorrow, so Tuesday, which is June 25th. And all of the content for this run will be done live. And all the live footage will be ported to YouTube, and it might be very slightly edited, really just editing out like absolute like radio silence or times I'm AFK, but for the most part it'll be the entire experience. So let's just hop to the spreadsheet, and we're here, and we're going to go over exactly what this run entails, because it is you know, it's interesting. So again, this is Elden Ring region locked all boss. What that means is there's a subset of rules and an order of operation. Basically, we're killing every single boss in each area and doing the areas in the order that their level's at. So this is like the most appropriate intended route for Elden Ring. Now, if you are new to the game, this will be very difficult. And you may think, why is it so difficult? Because there's a lot of boss fights early on that most people either skip or just backtrack and then clear when they're much higher level. So we're going to have to engage with them at their intended location. And eventually, after we beat the entire base game, we head to the expansion. This document is going to be in the description below, and you can see in the listed sub-region order. After we beat the final area, we do go to Shadow of the Erdtree, and we'll full clear all of that in their intended order. However, just that's at the back half. We have little nuggets in the bottom here, so that one does say spoiler, so obviously don't click it if you want spoilers. So let's go over the rules. So anything with a health bar is a boss. That's rule number one. Aside from that, it also counts like invasions, right? Tactical invasions. Sometimes there's NPCs that invade, and you have to kill. Those also have health bars. However, they're displayed above, not on the bottom, but those are still counts. You must kill all bosses in each region before moving on to the next. For example, Limgrave West has a set of like, whatever it is, 12 bosses or something, 13 bosses. You have to kill all 13 bosses in Limgrave West before we can move on to Stormhill, which is the next area in Limgrave. And so on and so forth. I have to clear Stormhill before I can move to Limgrave East, and then, you know, you just keep going down. There's a couple, this is where it says you must complete regions in listed sub-region order. There is a couple of quests you have to do. If you don't do these quests, you'll lock yourself out of certain boss fights or certain invasion fights. So you have to complete Fia's quest line. You have to help Patches and progress his quest line at least until Volcano Manor, because he has exclusive contracts that you have to use to kill people. You have to do Ronnie's quest line to get to Mulet Altar. You have to advance these people's quest lines until you get to fight them. And ultimately, you cannot receive aid or items from other players. So I can't summon another player. I can't have a player drop me an item. That seems obvious, but it's in the lists. As long as you adhere to all the rules above, anything in game is fine. I'm personally not going to like farm levels, but for this challenge, feel free. It really isn't an advantage. What I mean by that is like there's nothing in the earlier stages that's worth farming at that point in time. If you want to go over level, you can. It'll make no difference when you get to the expansion, because the expansion is scaled to your level for the most part. So it'll help you with the base game a little bit, but it's just irrelevant. There's no tactics, efforts, anything goes. If you could do it in game, it's totally fair. That's how the game's designed. You could use any advantages. A lot of times you'll be summoning, like people don't realize when you summon an NPC to assist you in a boss fight, that gives the boss more health. It scales them up accordingly. So it's not as if it's necessarily advantageous. And the same thing goes when using the vast majority of spirit ashes for summons are as detrimental as they are helpful. Any boss that has very specific movesets that are lethal, which in Elden Ring and most Souls games is most bosses, targeting is very important. An example of why this is actually detrimental is, say I summon a jellyfish to help me fight a boss. Right, now I don't know where that boss is going to attack. It becomes much more difficult to avoid a boss's moves when they're going to be sporadically changing targeting between me and my summon. AoE abilities become very hard to predict. Movesets when you're facing the boss versus behind the boss, meaning the left and right is swapped for where to avoid things. It's just as difficult. Like, you know, there are some concessions to that, but for the most part, spirit summons do not make the fight substantially easier, and a lot of times will be detrimental, especially for the later bosses. You know, think about something like fighting Melania in Miquella's Erdtree. She heals when she hits things, and the Spirit Ashes don't make much of a concerted effort to avoid being hit. So every time she combos out on a Spirit Ash, she basically heals to full. So that's where it's like detrimental, right? Or any large boss that has big AoE mechanics, the Spirit Ashes don't understand how to move. So, and you know, that list goes on. So anything you can do in game, any sort of cheeses, it's all fine. This is really difficult initially anyway, and most difficult bosses, there's no sneaky way around them. Like I mentioned Melania, there's no way to cheese Melania that I know of. There's some ways to cheese other bosses, but again, as much effort as you put forth in that, a lot of times it's the same amount of time it would be just to kill it like normally. And so for this playthrough, in my experience, I've beaten every single Souls game multiple times, multiple builds. I've beaten Elden Ring like 10 times now. I've already done much more difficult stuff than this, so I have like nothing to prove. It's like, this is just for fun. Which leads me to what I'm going to play. So this is the basis of the framework. If you want to do this yourself, I suggest doing it. It's very fun. I've done this on a strength build, a dex build, and arcane also. It's been very enjoyable. There's obviously some parts are hard, some parts are easy, vice versa. And yeah, and then the expansion is just hard. It's just hard. So there's no way avoiding how hard that is for the most part. But what do I want to play? So I've never played an int build or really a faith caster. So I want to play a specific caster. I'm going to start with an astrologer. The reason I'm starting with an astrologer is because astrologer has the highest cumulative int faith than the other classes, right? The actual total is the same as the confessor, I believe. However, the total amount of vigor, mind, and endurance on the confessor is 33, and the astrologer's is, I think, also 33. It might be 34, or maybe it's one more in the prisoner. Oh no, it's one more for the prophet, because you have to have a seal, unless you get the first seal. So it's better to just do it on that character, because the total here, I believe, is higher. Yes, okay, so the astrologer has the highest total int, faith, vigor, mind, endurance of the casters, which is a little bit harder in the beginning because it has very low vigor. Vigor is health, so it's low life pool. Trying to beat the tutorial boss is extremely... You basically get one shot. So I do have a subset of rules. Initially, in my first playthroughs, there's like 2 or 3 ways to basically safe spot the Grafted Scion. Otherwise, if you basically die to it, you can't revisit it until the 4 Belfries in Liurnia West. And unfortunately, we initially had the rule set being, if you died to the Grafted Scion, you had to remake the character, but there's no way to restart without literally deleting the character, remake it, and that process is so annoying, because it might take you 10, 15 attempts, so it's 10, 15 times you have to exit a game, delete the character, remake the character, and it's just like, whatever. So it's such an inconsequential part that just for ease of, like, friction, basically, if you die to the Grafted Scion after trying to kill it, the second you get to Liurnia West, you have to use your imbued sword key on that Belfry to fight the Grafted Scion, which I think is fine. You're still, like, losing something, so it's like, that's your punishment. Liurnia West, you do fight after Ainsole River, so it's over here, but I think that's, you know, totally fine. Otherwise, like, if there was an easier way to revisit that and not have to keep remaking characters, you know, that's like a little amendment. But yeah, and my plan, again, is to play an astrologer, and the reason I'm playing astrologer is because since I'm locked to, obviously, Limgrave West being my first area, some of the hard fights in Limgrave West, just to, like, meta a little bit here, is going to be this tree spirit. Where is it? This ulcerated tree spirit in the Fringfolk Hero's Grave is very, very, very difficult as a caster with no life pool. However, it's weak to fire, and in that dungeon is also the caster thing, the dragon incantation item. So we're going to be using that, the dragon commune seal, plus using dragon fire after killing the dragon to hopefully have a good chance of beating that guy without going a little bit crazy. But even that is like, that's a lot of prep work to do for just the first area, because again, you're extremely squishy. So I have to get to 15 faith, get 1 more arcane, and then do some sort of stuff there. The caster is actually, I think, playing an int caster is probably the hardest start for Limgrave, because you don't have access to much a variety of spell in all of Limgrave. So it's pretty tricky stuff. But yeah, so I'm gonna be streaming this, and you know, either today or tomorrow starting it. But it'll be in the description of the Twitch thing. It'll say, you know, region locked all boss challenge. and I'll have my document shared, and I'll start, you know, check marking off the bosses. So like as I beat the very first, you know, Soldier of Godric, I check it off, and that's cool. And I'll go through the entire thing, and it'll all be posted on YouTube, so you guys can watch along for the ride. And then again, the streams will only be edited to the point of like literal dead air removal. But aside from that, it'll be all the entire footage, because it's just that way you could showcase the entire process. I'm sure I'll struggle in a lot of fights, like fighting Bloody Finger will be incredibly difficult with no life pool. That's the downside of playing Astrologer, but I'm fairly experienced in Elden Ring and Souls games, so I should have an okay time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I'll either be starting this today or tomorrow, and it'll probably only take me, the previous character I did this entire run on was about 95 hours. Including the DLC, so I imagine it'll be a little bit, maybe more than that, because I think this will have a harder time, because I'm not as familiar with an intelligence-based build, or even a Faith Dragon Caster, something like that, but it'll be a very fun experience, so I hope you enjoy the journey. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments below. All streams will be uploaded to YouTube. I think I've covered everything, and yeah, that's it. It should be fun. Let the adventure commence. I'll see you guys in the streams or in the YouTubes. Bye bye.